Today, we're diving into a really profound global shift. The materials we're looking at for this explainer suggest that for the first time in history, huge numbers of people are leaving Islam. So what happens when they do? Well, it turns out to be a major clash between personal belief and ancient religious law, and the consequences can change everything. Let's get into it.
All right, first up, a modern exodus. The information we've gone through points to a trend that, honestly, is pretty surprising to a lot of people. A really significant and growing movement of people away from Islam.
And the central claim is, well, it's a big one. More people leave Islam today than at any time in history. We're not just talking about a few individuals here and there. This is being described as a widespread, accelerating exodus, something that really marks a turning point in the faith's 1,400-year history.
And you might think this is just happening in one or two places, but no, the trend is apparently taking root right across the traditional heartlands of Islam. We're talking Iran, the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. And what's interesting is that these individuals aren't all going to the same place, philosophically. Many become atheists, while a really significant number are converting to Christianity.
So what's driving all this? Well, the sources point to one massive catalyst: the internet. Think about it. For the very first time, people in what are often very closed societies can get unfiltered access to historical criticism, to scientific arguments, to all kinds of philosophical debates that challenge traditional religious stories, and they can do it all from the privacy of their own screen.
Okay, so this brings us to our next section, choice versus constraint. This whole phenomenon leads the material we're looking at to draw a really sharp contrast between how the world's two biggest religions, Christianity and Islam, seem to approach growth and, well, keeping their members.
On one side, you have the growth of Christianity, which is framed as a model of free choice. People are actively converting into the faith. But on the other side, the argument is that Islamic growth is driven mostly by high birth rates, combined with these really powerful constraints that make leaving incredibly difficult. So one is presented as a path you choose to walk onto, the other a system designed to keep you from walking away.
And this whole contrast leads to a really critical question posed in the source material. If a faith is true, why does it need a punishment for leaving? This question is the pivot point. It shifts us from looking at the trend itself to exploring the powerful systems designed to prevent it, the legal framework around apostasy.
So, Section 3, the law on apostasy. To really understand those constraints, we need to dig into what Islamic law, or Sharia, actually says about the act of leaving the faith. The key word here is apostasy. And it's pretty simple, really. It just means the formal act of renouncing your religion. Now, in a lot of belief systems, that's seen as a personal matter, right? But within traditional Islamic law, it's treated as a crime with severe, legally defined punishments.
And here's the thing you have to understand. This isn't some fringe interpretation we're talking about. There is a powerful, long-standing consensus on the punishment for apostasy across all the major schools of Islamic law.
And the punishment is laid out very clearly. According to the legal consensus described in our source, the penalty for an adult male who leaves the faith is death. For a female apostate, the punishment is typically imprisonment or physical beatings until she recants her decision.
This ruling isn't just pulled out of thin air, it's rooted in foundational texts. The source points directly to this command from Sahih al-Bukhari, which is one of the two most trusted collections of the sayings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad. The instruction, whoever changes his religion, kill him, is incredibly direct, and it has been a cornerstone of Islamic law for centuries.
So the really big takeaway here is just how broad this consensus is. It's not the view of just one text or some niche school of thought. The source shows this ruling is affirmed in the most authoritative collections, and it's upheld by all four major Sunni schools of law and the main Shia school. It forms a near unanimous legal tradition on the issue.
So let's move on to our next section, the real-world consequences. How does this historical law actually affect people today? Because this isn't just theoretical stuff. It has life-or-death implications for people right now.
Just take a look at this table. It shows exactly how that religious law becomes state law. In countries like Afghanistan, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, leaving Islam is officially punishable by death. In other places, like Pakistan, existing blasphemy laws are often used as a weapon against people who are even just suspected of apostasy. The penalties enforced across these nations are no joke. They range from long prison sentences all the way to execution.
But, and this is a huge but, the threat isn't just confined to the laws of those specific countries.
For ex-Muslims living in the West, where freedom of religion is a legally protected right, the danger often comes from somewhere much, much closer to home.
The danger often comes directly from a person's own family and community. The consequences can range from being completely disowned and ostracized socially to, in the most tragic cases, facing violence or so-called honor killings from relatives who feel it's their duty to enforce religious law themselves. The pressure to stay in line is just immense.
So if we boil it all down, the core argument our sources are making is this. The act of leaving Islam can be incredibly dangerous. And this danger isn't random. It's rooted directly in a broad historical consensus within Islamic law that commands punishment for anyone who chooses to walk away from the faith.
And this all brings us to the central conflict, the big question hanging over this whole topic. In an age of endless information, what happens when someone's personal search for truth leads them away from their faith? But the laws of that faith are designed to never let them go. It's really a collision between the modern and the ancient, between personal freedom and communal law. Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.